Hello everybody, this is the Frugal Streamer. I want to talk about single PC live streaming today. This is something I've been thinking about an awful lot, and it's something I made a prediction about not so long ago, but when Turing Invent came out, I said, watch out because single PC live streaming is going to be in the forefront. But one of the big issues with single PC live streaming was still the amount of load on your GPU and CPU with rendering. So, today, we'll talk about single PC live streaming and how you can set up your single PC for gaming and live streaming with minimal performance loss and zero drop frames. So let's go ahead and get into the video. Now, before we get into the tutorial, I want to make sure everybody understands that there is some things that goes on in the background that can really affect the performance of your CPU and your GPU. So OBS, for instance, uses your GPU for rendering all of your scenes, all your overlays, especially when you're using animated overlays. Those take up a lot of resources. They take up your CPU and GPU. And oftentimes, when you couple that with a game that uses a lot of resources also, it can cause a lot of drop frames. So we need to figure out a way to minimize the amount of GPU and CPU use for those files if you want to use animated overlays, or we could use static overlays that are a lot easier to render. So we'll go ahead and we'll talk about those first. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is how to reduce your CPU and GPU rendering lag. The big deal for a lot of people, especially if you're playing a game that just uses a lot of resources. Apex Legends is notorious for this. Battlefield 5 is notorious for this. Even with a 1080 Ti like I have in my gaming PC, it still uses a lot of the CPU and GPU when you couple that with, other things going on your computer. So it's important to be able to reduce that as much as possible. So I did a video a while back, and one of the things that I highly recommended is using a cloud media source for doing your overlays. Now, Stream Elements and Player.me both provide this service where you can build overlays on their system, store the files on their servers, and then you just simply use a media browser to then bring into your OBS Studio, and then that would be your overlay, and it can be animated, and it reduces your CPU, GPU usage by nearly 1/2, which is really nice. And it's a big deal, especially if you're using an older CPU that you're using a considerable amount of processing to be able to process this stuff and render it. So I recommend you definitely do that. And then the next thing I recommend do, if you're really having a lot of issues with using up your CPU and your GPU, well, then you can reduce your settings in game. You can also reduce the resolution in game. So I would definitely recommend doing that because that will take a lot of load off of your GPU. And many don't realize that a GPU is actually used for rendering things like a preview in OBS Studio, rendering those animated files along with your CPU. Most people think that the CPU does all of that work, and that's not true at all. As a matter of fact, it renders the UI that OBS Studio uses, and even your audio mixer, the little VU meter that goes up and down as you're speaking like I am now. It uses your GPU and CPU to render that stuff, and it takes up resources, valuable resources, when you're trying to maximize performance for your game. So that's all things you need to remember. Now, there's another step that I talked about in the video that you could use to reduce your load, and that is actually, if you're using Streamlabs OBS, is to enable performance mode, and if you're using OBS Studio, is to actually disable your preview, because then that will take away all that rendering that has to be done for OBS. And that's a big deal, and that does help out a lot too. All right, one more thing, and this is a big one, and this is if you're going to use OBS Studio. I'm not 100% sure that Streamlabs OBS has put this update in their latest version. I will actually reach out to them and ask about this, but in the meantime, I recommend, if you're going to do single PC gaming and live streaming, that you use OBS Studio, because one of the big issues that we have had up until recently is the prioritization of OBS Studio and your game with Windows 10. Windows 10 will always put your game, or would always put your game, ahead of OBS when your GPU was near its max load for rendering. Then as a result, you would lose frames in OBS Studio, and it made your live stream choppy and just laggy, and it was not good at all. It is not good at all. You don't want that. But recently, OBS developers have gone and have done a fix for this. So now if you were to use OBS Studio and run it as an administrator, okay, when you do this, now Windows 10, if your GPU is competing for resources between your game and OBS Studio will now get the priority. That does mean that your game is going to lose frame rate. Your FPS is going to go down. But I don't think it's as significant as if it were to be in OBS Studio with drop frames. You will still have a nice, smooth live stream, and you will not drop any frames at all. So it's really nice now to do that. All right, so here's the setup. I have OBS Studio set up. I'm also running MSI Afterburner, the graph here on the left side, just to monitor my PC performance as I'm doing this. So I want to get a baseline first of just how much my PC will use while streaming. So right now I only have a couple things set up here. I have a game stream scene, I have an intermission scene, I have a starting scene. There's really nothing in any of this that would cause any extra load to OBS Studio. So I want to hit the start streaming button just to kind of get an idea where we're at, and then we'll add things from there, and then we'll see how it affects your PC performance, including once we start the game up. We'll start the game and we'll do all that. So anyway, so I'm going to start streaming. What I've done is I've connected to my Twitch inspector. It's a great tool for you to use to monitor your stream, to see the performance of your stream with your connection, and then do some tweaks as necessary if you have drop frames or whatever. But it's easy to do. You log into Twitch inspector, and it gives you a little additional part you need to add to the back end of your stream key, so that it knows that, hey, you're not actually going live. We're going to send this to the Twitch inspector so that it will then give you your stats as needed. So that's what I'm doing right now, and it looks like I'm seeing about 9% CPU usage is read from OBS, and then a total CPU usage, which includes everything running in the background on Windows, of about 19-20% right there. So that's actually pretty good. You can see GPU usage up here around 29-30% too, and I don't even have anything added yet. Now remember, this is my gaming PC is a Ryzen 7 1800X with a 1080 Ti NVIDIA. We need to use NVENC, okay, for this. Even if you do not have a Turing GPU, there is improvements in the new NVENC that applies to all versions of it. So even if you don't have that, you need to try to use this new NVENC. All right, so that's what we're going to do here. We'll actually get a better reading. So you got the new NVENC here. CBR is fine. We'll send a bit rate of 6,000, and we'll switch the keyframes to 2, and then we'll go max quality, profile high. And for streaming, you do not want to use look ahead. I do have a best stream settings video that'll explain that, why you do not want to do that. Psycho visual tuning, you definitely want that on, and I only have 1 GPU. Max speed frames is 2, that is good. And there we go. So let's try this again. We'll see what the difference is between X264 and using the NVIDIA NVENC. So there you go. So now we're streaming. I'm down to 11%, 8% GPU. You can see that the CPU did not go up as opposed to what it was when using X264. You're still at 8%. That is because the NVENC uses its own encoding. Okay, there is a separate encoder chip on the graphics card itself, separate from the GPU that renders and separate from the CPU. So that's why we're seeing this here, and it's really nice. All right, so there's our baseline. We're at 8% on the CPU. We're at about 8% on the GPU. So we'll go ahead and stop. Now let's go ahead and we'll start adding some stuff to the OBS Studio. Okay, so I've built one scene, and what I've done here is I've done all local files. I want you to see just the difference is with just not even streaming, strictly using the preview and what we have here. So let me swap over. So here is the scene built. I have the starting scene here. I haven't added any text or anything. I'm just going to leave it like this. I've had the game scene would be just a game capture, so I don't have the game running here. But I have the intermission scene. I've added my webcam, and I've got this animated background too. And like I said, this is all local off the hard drive. But look at the load that we're seeing here with the GPU. We're at 34% GPU usage. We're at about 14% now on the CPU, so that's a lot. Now, just to show you what how much effect the preview has on this, let's go ahead and disable it. Now, look at what's happened here. As you've seen my CPU drop all the way down to 11%, 16%. So it has a lot of to do with rendering on your GPU. It has a lot of load, and so that's one of the reasons why I told you that this may help you if you don't have any other options. Okay, but I wanted to do this because I want you to compare this between using the local files and then what we talked about earlier with using a third-party service like Streamlabs to build your overlays there, and then you just use a simple browser source, local source there to display your full overlay instead of having to build everything locally, because it takes a lot off of your GPU and your CPU when doing this. So anyways, I wanted to do that. Now let's go ahead and again, we'll hit the start streaming. Remember, we are streaming using NVENC, so we'll see what we got here and see how much extra load that adds. All right, so we are now live, and you can see that the encoder has taken some of the load for the GPU to encode, so it's down now to 11%, and we are at the CPU usage is at 16%, and it's sitting there pretty good. All right, so you know, you can swap around. You know, different scenes are going to require various different loads. You know, as you remember that, and this includes alerts and stinger transitions. Especially stinger transitions is one thing. It's like a sudden shock to your GPU and your CPU, something that has to render real quick, and it's moving, so it makes it even worse. So there's a lot of load that's added to that, and we'll show you how to do that here in a second. All right, so now we'll go ahead and build a new scene, a new set of scenes using the stream elements scenes that I've already got set up there. Okay, so let's do that now. All right, so now we've built the scenes using the browser sources instead of using local files. As you can see, they look exactly the same. They operate exactly the same. There's just not the same amount of load on the thing. I've got 4 scenes built here. I've got the intermission scene, game scene, end scene, starting scene. I've added the alerts. I've added the intermission. I've added the camera. It's all there. So let's go ahead and we'll switch over. And here is everything, and now we will go live and we'll see what happens here. We can look at the stats here, and right now I am, looks like the internet is stabilized. I was dropping frames, but that is because my internet is again terrible. But anyway, so we're here, we're not skipping any frames, we're not losing any frames due to encoding or rendering, we're not dropping. All right, and you can see we're now stable. Bit rate's only at 1618, even though we're set to output of 6K, and that is probably because I have dynamic bit rate set, which I do. So that's why it's only using 16K right now. But anyway, so this is it. I mean, we're at 16% GPU. We're at about 20% CPU right now. Maybe 18% at the most. So that's actually pretty good. So that gives us a good, 70%, 70, 75, maybe 80% wiggle room there for a game to be used using this scene. So let's go ahead now and we'll start a game up and we'll see what happens. Oh, and by the way, I did tell you, I was also running Discord too. Discord running in the background. Typical for most people. Also have Stream Deck running that some streamers may have. I do happen to have the Twitch app running. Actually, that is the Twitch app. I do have Discord running. There's Discord. They all look the same to me. Anyway. Okay, so here we are. We have Battlefield 5 running. I am streaming to my Twitch inspector. Now, note the numbers on the encoding and render lag frames skip there is sticking at 82 and 93. It's inevitable whenever you're bringing a game up, you're bringing a program up, you're going to have this happen. So just know that it's going to happen, but know now the game's running. You can note that actually this is something that's good to note. Note the graph on GPU usage here at the top of the graphs there. It's at 99%, but we're not dropping any frames, and that is because that we're running OBS Studio in admin, and it's using that fix that they did so that it prioritizes OBS over the game. So that's why it's doing that. Otherwise we would be dropping frames, skipping frames like crazy. So anyway, so it's just now the game is actually taking a bit of a performance loss compared to OBS. All right, so let's go ahead and we will jump into multiplayer and we'll do Wake Island. All right, so there's a couple things to note. I got a FPS counter up in the upper right hand corner. It might be hard to read for you guys. It's really small. But anywhere from 80, 75 FPS is a good number while I'm in the game. Seems to be. It's over 60, which is really good considering you're streaming this heavy game. It's a very hard game to run well. Because there's just so much going on with, chaos, all the things exploding, things that just constantly have to be rendered. So to be able to run this and stream this on a single PC, where it looks halfway decent, and you're able to perform, is pretty good. I tried. Alright, so here's the deal. I think the video has shown that if you have a decent gaming PC, you can also live stream with it. If you are a 1080p gamer, the 1660 Super is a great GPU to buy for live streaming and gaming at 1080p, and it will give you over 60 FPS on most games. Battlefield 5 is probably the most taxing game that I've played on my PC, and you saw we were over, generally 75, 85 frames per second while streaming. So it is entirely possible. You can build a nice gaming PC that'll also live stream, I would say for less than $600, maybe even in the mid fives right now. With the R5 2600 right now is like $120. RAM is 16 gig of RAM will get you in the $70 range. The power supply is about the same price as the RAM. You're looking at a case that'll probably be about $70. The GPU, I mean, you can get a 1660 Super, I think is right at $200. So, I mean, $550, $600 will get you a really nice gaming PC. So if you're looking at 1440p, if you need to support 1440p, then maybe look at getting the RTX 2060. That's going to raise the price tag a little bit, but nothing super crazy. And the RTX 2060 is a fantastic video card. My son has it in his gaming PC. He has a R5 2600X, and that PC does all the work it needs to do to handle the latest games and live stream. So anyway, I hope this video helped you out. It's been something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and and it was good to see that my PC, even it's 3 iterations behind. It's the first Ryzen with the the 1800X that I have, and then I have the GTX 1080 Ti. It's good to see that it can definitely hold its own still with live streaming and gaming. It does fine in gaming, but I never really thought it would do as good as it did with live streaming too. So anyway, I hope the video helped you out. If it did, I would love to see you hit the like. It does help me out a lot. The YouTube algorithm feeds off likes and views, so I do appreciate it. Patreons, you continue to support, and I appreciate everything that you guys do for that. If you are looking at another way to support me other than viewing the channel, feel free to join the Patreon. It's patreon.com/Frugal Streamer. For as little as $1 a month, you can support there monthly. I would appreciate it. But other than that, guys, I just appreciate you coming and taking the time to watch this video. And go out there. I would love to hear your success stories on your gaming PC and being able to live stream on it too. I think a lot of these tweaks that I've shown you will help you out a lot with that. Definitely OBS Studio, I think right now is the way to go for streaming, if that's what you're going to use. Streamlabs OBS, once I find out if they've implemented those updates, I will let you know, because I think Streamlabs OBS provides some extra functionality that is geared towards single PC live streaming, but I think the performance right now with Streamlabs OBS is a little lacking compared to OBS Studio. OBS Studio is definitely more optimized. So anyway, that's it, guys. Make sure you check. Look, hit me the likes. Seriously, give me the likes. I'd appreciate it. If I don't hear from you again, I hope you guys have a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and we will see you later. Bye-bye. All right, so look, if you're watching this now, obviously you must have enjoyed the video. It must have helped you out. So please, go ahead and take it a step further by hitting the subscribe button and hitting that bell for notifications so you'll know when I have a video that goes live. There is a ton of resources on this channel built for you so that you can build your live stream and you can set yourself up for success in the future. So thank you again for supporting the channel. I do appreciate it. Hey, have a good Christmas. All right. We'll see you later.